the support for this kind of spending is near unanimous, and we don't hear from the Democratic side, we don't hear how this money should rather be spent on welfare programs. We don't hear from the Republicans how this money would be better spent on tax cuts. It seems that the only opposition that we're really hearing is border hawks saying that, no, we should be using this money to kick poor people off our border. It seems there's something in the American psyche about using violence and force to solve our problems. So the Ukraine aid bill has finally passed through the Congress and now through the Senate and is now law. And already orders are going out to provide weapons to Ukraine. There's also a lot of money in this bill for Israel and for Taiwan. This is something that actually kind of surprised me that it did finally go through. It seemed to me that there was a very real possibility that this bill would never go through, after what happened to Kevin McCarthy and the changeover of speakership to Mike Johnson. I had a feeling that it was possible that we had seen the end of this. So I know a lot of commentators said that no, this probably would eventually go through one way or the other, and they were right, it did. Somehow enough pressure was put on Mike Johnson that he did finally bring the bill to the floor. I've read some interesting articles that it seems Donald Trump came in, gave his support, and pretty much told Mike Johnson that he needed to go ahead and do this, and that he would still have the MAGA backing even if he brought this bill up for a vote. And so that took a lot of the pressure off of Mike Johnson, and he did bring it up for vote, and it went through. So though Donald Trump and his supporters like to put out the idea that Donald Trump is against the aid to Ukraine, and that he would go a different way on all this, and he is like kind of leading like the opposition, the anti-war opposition to this, it would seem that's not really the case. In fact, if you hear a lot of Donald Trump's statements about the war in Ukraine, he's really just more contrarian than anything else. Of course, he's going to criticize the administration. He is running against President Joe Biden, so he's going to criticize Joe Biden and his handling of what's going on in Ukraine. And he's going to say that he could do it better. And he uses language that is fairly exaggerated, saying that, the war never would have happened if he was president and that he would put a stop to it right away. But, of course, if you scratch the surface a little bit, you'll see that his policies and the way he's most likely to go would probably not be too much different from the way Joe Biden has gone. I'm sure we can all remember how much Donald Trump talked about withdrawing from Afghanistan, and then he didn't all throughout his presidency. When it happened during the Biden administration, Donald Trump and his supporters were huge critics of that withdrawal from Afghanistan. So I think we're seeing a similar thing here. A lot of talk, a lot of criticism, but that's politics. You have to criticize the other guy. You can't go, if you're running against the president, you can't praise his policies or voice public support for his policies. You have to criticize him, say he's doing no good and that you can do better. That's just how this works, and that's what Donald Trump's doing, and he's pretty good at doing it because his supporters certainly believe that, and the media certainly has picked up this message that Donald Trump is against supporting the Ukrainian war effort against the Russian invasion. Now, one of the main criticisms I've heard of this aid package to Ukraine is that money would be better spent protecting the United States southern border. In fact, it's puzzled me and really disappointed me just how little opposition there is to this massive war spending bill, funding war in Ukraine, funding war in Israel, and funding a preparation for war in Taiwan. The support for this kind of spending is near unanimous, and we don't hear from the Democratic side, we don't hear how this money should rather be spent on welfare programs. We don't hear from the Republicans how this money would be better spent on tax cuts. It seems that the only opposition that we're really hearing is border hawks saying that, no, we should be using this money to kick poor people off our border. It seems there's something in the American psyche about using violence and force to solve our problems, and the opposition to one kind of spending on violence and force to solve problems is another kind of spending to use violence and force to solve problems. If we're not going to support war in Europe to stop Russia, then let's spend it on militarizing our border to stop poor people from coming into this country to get help. And I'm going to say, I think this is a sign of an unhealthy state of mind in this country. I would be much more at peace, feel much better about the state of things if the debate was between, say, welfare spending versus tax cuts, with some kind of an actual opposition to spending on violence, spending on force, rather than just debate over what kind of violence we should be funding. I can't imagine a Christian system working by the principles of the New Testament that would be so eager to spend such vast resources on either war, preparing for war, or on oppressing the poor and needy. But yet that's the debate. That's the political debate. Those are the decisions. Those are the options that we have before us in this democracy. Two parties with a tremendous amount of crossover in their ideologies, debating where the state's ability to do violence and harm needs to be exerted. Here in Europe, Middle East, Asia, or on the southern border. Of course, there's this saying, goes something along the lines of, what a country is willing to do to foreigners, eventually they'll be doing it here at home. And something to keep in mind is that when they talk about border security in particular, a lot of what they're talking about, a lot of the proposals also have to do with deporting people who live in this country. So putting a lot of hardship even on people who live in this country in the name of defense and border integrity. So let's keep in mind the human consequences of these kinds of ideas. Conscripted Ukrainians being stood up in front of Russian artillery in the biggest war that Europe has seen since the Second World War. Funding Israel's war in Gaza and all the destruction going on there, or funding violence and oppression on the border and against even poor people within our borders. I'm going to close this video reading some scriptures, starting with 1 John chapter 4, where the Apostle John says, "Ye are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. They are of the world, therefore speak they of the world, and the world heareth them. We are of God. He that knoweth God heareth us. He that is not of God heareth not us. Hereby know we the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and every one that loveth is born of God, and knoweth God." And now going over to the epistle of James in the 1st chapter, he says this, "Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world." Well, thanks so much for watching. If you like what I'm doing, please be sure to click the like button and subscribe to this channel. Leave some comments below. Tell me what you think about all this. Am I missing something? Am I getting this right? Please let me know, and I'll talk to you again later. Bye for now.